Look forward to talk to you about this topic. I know in the office we've had many clients that this topic of 10b5-1 trust has come up. Walk us through what is a 10b5-1? Who does it involve? Why would they use it? How are they communicating it with their company? Walk us through that if you would.
Absolutely. So a 10b5-1 trust is essentially a prearranged trading plan that allows for insiders like executives and directors to buy or sell shares of their company's stock in a manner that really minimizes or avoids any sort of accusations of insider trading. The 10b5-1 plan actually came from the SEC rule 10b5/1 of the 1934 Securities and Exchange Act. And basically, it's a preset trading instruction with a trustee. And so a participant of a 10b5-1 trust would basically pick a few things that are important to them. The price at which they want to sell the security, how many shares, and the dates for buying and selling those shares. These are basically set up with the trustee ahead of time. While there is some minor flexibility with them, they really are irrevocable for the most part. And if you think about like sort of the idea and concept of a 10b5-1 trust, essentially it's supposed to be an arm's length transaction to basically determine I want to sell 10,000 shares of my stock that's currently trading at, let's say, $100 per share. I want to sell 10,000 shares when it reaches $200 per share. And I'm going to do this at least a year out to avoid short-term cap gains or whatever it may be. And let's suppose that plan triggers. The stock did well 2 to 3 years down the road. It's now at $200 a share. That plan then sells those 10,000 shares that you had set forth in that example with the 10b5-1 trust. And then 2 weeks later, there's some large scandal that comes out with your company. The stock tanks from $200 a share back down to, let's say, $125 a share. And the SEC says, hey, we noticed the chief revenue officer for this company just dumped 10,000 shares 2 weeks before the stock price plummeted. If they have a 10b5-1 trust on file, they can see you set this thing up 3 years prior, 2 years prior. There was no way that you were trading on non-public information, that right? You weren't even aware of that in all likelihood. It was 2 or 3 years ago that you set it up. And so the sort of idea and concept with these things being irrevocable is that you're setting this up well in advance of any unforeseen circumstances with the stock price that may be non-public material information. So when it comes to setting up a 10b5-1 trust, we always advise our clients to begin with the end in mind, meaning that we often start at a place with these types of plans to understand the concentration risk that a client might have when it comes to that position in their overall net worth or overall net worth. There's certain percentages that we help our clients try to get their hands around, like what percentage of your liquid net worth or your total net worth does this position have in your total portfolio? And what are you really comfortable with? Let's understand what goals you're trying to achieve and how your portfolio needs to be managed in accordance to those goals and your risk tolerance to then identify what percentage of that stock you really should be having in your portfolio. And so when I say we begin with the end in mind, we generally like to have that conversation with our clients to really understand what their goals are and what their time horizon is for that goal, like sending a kid to college or sending a kid to private school or grandchildren's education or ultimately their retirement. We then work through the math and reverse engineer that to determine how many of these shares do you have currently, what's your cost basis in these shares, what quantity of additional shares might you be getting through other forms of future grants that are made either through RSU or ISO or NSO type of grant, that may be coming in the future. And then lastly is working with the general counsel or the deputy general counsel of your organization to make sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed within the plan, so that that can ultimately be filed with the SEC. These plans are very effective in a number of different things. And so 10b5-1 plans can be effective in helping control the optics when it comes to third-party stakeholders, like let's say your investor relations department is talking to an institutional investor that may be interested in buying into the company. And they see that the chief revenue officer just sold 10,000 shares of the company. They might ask a question like, why did this person that's on your executive team sell such a large quantity of shares? And your investor relations department will have knowledge of this because it is filed with the SEC. And they can say, this was a 10b5-1 plan. This executive is 58 years old. It plans on retiring, at some point over the next 3 to 5 years. And he's just trying to diversify, or she's trying to diversify her portfolio. It's also beneficial when it comes up for promotion. A lot of times we found that a lot of times clients are scared to or apprehensive to sell their company stock because of the optics that might come across to their leadership team, that they're not sort of bought into the vision of what the team is trying to pull off. And so by having one of these plans, it can also help sort of reduce or ease some of that concern when it comes to the overall optics in selling these plans. These are, though, set on a set trading schedule. A couple of nuances with 10b5-1 plans is that, A, they cannot be established during a blackout period. So if you're watching this, you're likely an executive in a company and you're well aware of what blackout periods are, but they're basically timeframes that you're restricted from buying or selling that stock. So you cannot establish one of these plans during that period of time. There is some flexibility with them, but again, as I mentioned just a few moments ago with 10b5-1 plans, you really want it to be as arm's length as possible. There are some legal and some compliance costs that go into this. Generally, they're pretty nominal when it compares to the risk, but there are some boilerplate documents that maybe your general counsel or your investor relations department might have. We've got some sample documents, some attorneys that we've worked with that we can certainly help there as well. So just some things to consider, as well as the tax implications. These sales happen generally where you have no control over when the position is sold. And so in a 10b5-1 trust, if you're selling a position generally for a large gain, that may not come at the most opportune time. You may have some other event where you have some other gains for maybe selling a vacation home or a rental property or other things that may not necessarily always work out timing wise. So you just want to be mindful of that, and then ultimately work with your financial advisor or financial professional to help mitigate some of that through tax loss harvesting on other positions within your portfolio. The other thing to just make mention of with 10b5-1 trust in particular is that what I've seen happen a lot of times with these is that people put them in place and they forget about them. They don't regularly review them, monitor them, and update them based on other awards that they have. And so that's just something to sort of keep in mind. A lot of times people put these in place and it's kind of like a insurance policy. They feel good because they have it, and then they don't really review it as often as they ought to. And so those are just some things to sort of be aware of. But generally speaking, these are really great to have because they help clients stay in compliance with the SEC. And certainly, while nothing's totally eliminated from a risk perspective, if done properly with the proper safe harbor provisions, you can almost reduce the risk to next to nothing of an accusation of insider trading rules. And I think even more importantly, shed some light into some better optics onto why you're selling that company's stock, both for internal and external stakeholder purposes. And so those are some things to consider when it comes to implementing and executing a 10b5-1 trust.
Well, yeah, Dave, thank you so much for going into such great detail there. I know that we have many clients, we've talked through this, worked through this, and from blackouts to tax consequences to really it all comes back to what's your financial plan. And if what Dave walked through with the 10b5-1 trust is something you've heard of, or you need some assistance with, and you need some planning around, or just have more questions, we'd love to chat with you. Reach out to us on our website at instrumentalwealth.com. Call us and set an appointment, or reach out to us on social media, and we can dive deeper. And we're glad to do that with you as we see so much value in this. So, Dave, thanks so much for walking through that. And we hope to speak with you soon.